Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so thank you. Professor, there have been several, unfortunately, unsuccessful HIV vaccine trials since the 1990s. Have they all been based on a similar vaccine technology?
No, so the HIV quest, I guess is the way to describe it. It has been a long one, has attempted a variety of different platforms. So I think everybody would have heard in the last few days, weeks, maybe of the viral vector platform. But there have been others where we've used a protein-based platform. And also other kinds of DNA type platforms. So to answer your question shortly, no, there have been a variety actually over the time. And in fact, we've had a number of eras. There was a time when we thought we didn't need neutralizing antibodies. There was a time when we thought T cells were more important. And so it's been modified depending on what was kind of the in thing at the time.
Tell me a little bit about the UABO trial, which looked so promising early on, and how you felt when eventually it was shown to be ineffective.
Yes, so the story starts actually way back in 2009 when what became known as the RV144 trial. This was a trial that was conducted, an amazing trial, conducted in Thailand in 16,000 individuals. It took a long time because actually Thailand was making terrific inroads in reducing their incidence. And so the accumulation of endpoints, the rate at which in the placebo arm people became infected became fewer and fewer. So the trial took a long time to come to conclusion, but very exciting data that we saw a somewhat modest 31% reduction in HIV incidence, but it was a signal. It was the first time a vaccine for HIV had shown any results. So we were elated. And actually, that was after 48 months. So if you dialed it back to 12 months after the vaccination, there was a 60% reduction, which is really very, reasonable. And anybody would get excited about that. So based on those results, the world galvanized itself to modify that regimen so that we could bring it here to the South. And people may or may not know, it's a little bit like we're hearing with SARS-CoV-2, there are different kinds of HIV variants in the world. So we have one we've called C-clade here, and the one circulating in Thailand is called BE. So we modified their regimen to fit our clade, and that became UABO. We had an initial phase 2 to make sure that we were seeing the immune results we hoped for, and we did. And we published those, and we moved straight into the large phase 3 trial, and that was called UABO. And I will say that both Professor Gray and I, the other two co-PIs of that, and many people around the world actually, were devastated when we saw that we had absolutely no impact at all. Really had a great deal of hope because we were building on, a good story. I mean, we had some evidence. So we strengthened the regimen. We gave it a better boost. And a stronger kind of help factor called an adjuvant. And, it didn't work. So very sad indeed.
When it comes to vaccines, why is HIV such a difficult target?
So this virus is, it is stealthy. It truly is extraordinary. So what it has done, when we try to design a vaccine, we go for something on the surface or some aspect of the pathogen, which we know will really stir up our immune systems. So it'll be, and we want to take that or emulate that or, model our vaccine on that particular piece in order to stimulate the immune system. Now, what HIV does is it disguises those very immunogenic components. It hides it with sugar, which our immune systems don't pick up at all. So our immune systems are kind of blind to sugar. And this, little pathogen has evolved in such a way that everything that our immune system would get excited about and want to move in and kill that pathogen is covered, if you like, disguised. So that makes it really hard. So that's number one. Number two, we actually, unlike SARS-CoV-2 and COVID, where people get better naturally, admittedly, some people get very sick and die, but the vast majority of people get over their disease and get better. We know with HIV, we don't have a cure, right? So we don't have natural immunity in that regard. And then we've got other problems, like our animal model isn't really that great. So you can't infect animals with HIV. You have to use an animal version of HIV called SHIV. It's simian HIV virus. And so it's not quite the same as the human model. And so we can't do the experiments in the animal in order to extrapolate into humans. So those are probably the main sort of scientific reasons. And then there's another reason, which is, we've seen the most amazing galvanizing of resources around COVID. We've never seen that with HIV, and we've seen even less for TB. The way the world has just kind of thrown resources at COVID has been eye-opening, and we've seen terrific results very, very quickly. We haven't seen those kinds of commitments. And I think that's because there's a perception that the return on the investment isn't necessarily going to be great. And so we haven't seen the same kind of engagement. We hope that COVID will get people excited and they'll see the opportunities and the application, and we'll be able to bring new partners into the field. But I think time will tell in that regard.
A lot of people around the world are excited about the vaccines that are being rolled out using the mRNA technology. Is there scope, is there a future to apply what we've learned in the mRNA technology to other diseases and other viruses, HIV, for example?
Certainly. I think that there is, a real component now following the success, obviously, that we've heard around SARS-CoV-2 recently. And I've heard through the grapevine, although I've not spoken to those manufacturers myself, that there is real movement towards HIV. So particularly the new kids on the block, people who hadn't necessarily, made a lot of products to date. I think they feel perhaps emboldened by their success and, and maybe feeling like this is a feasible goal. So, I'm delighted. The field really needs more players. We need more ideas. I think, we need a vaccine. So we have to really keep on, and it's terrific to have more people interested and wanting to help.
Then do you envision that it would work in the same way that it works for the COVID vaccine? Would it work in a similar way or not really?
Yeah, I mean, let me take, for example, the one we're rolling out today, the AD26. It's a viral vector. That platform, that concept has been used for Zika, for Ebola, for RSV. So once you've got a working platform, the immunogen you stick in, can be modified depending on what pathogen you're hoping to target. So in principle, now, again, with the caveat that HIV does have, finding that immunogen has been one of our big problems. And I can tell you there's now a very exciting new move of sort of back engineering. So instead of coming up with a good idea and then working forward empirically to say, let's test it and see if we've got a winner, you now go to the person living with HIV. You find the broadly neutralizing antibody, somebody who's made something in their immune system that looks very promising. And then you back engineer it to say, what does the vaccine need to look like? And so that approach is a new approach looking very exciting in the field. And I could imagine if you could wed that to new mRNA technology, we could have a winner. I mean, I don't want it to sound like it's easy, but that is, I think, a real possibility, and people are now beginning to move in that direction.
The current mRNA vaccines show less efficacy against transmission of the virus, but still offer protection against severe disease. Would this be an acceptable outcome for an HIV vaccine?
I think with HIV, we really are looking for a preventive vaccine, if we can, because, I think that would be terrific. I mean, that's the goal, right? To not have people get a virus that's very hard to disrupt and get rid of. On the other hand, there is a place to say, if we can reduce viral load with a vaccine, so people get infected with much less of the virus, it doesn't grow to huge amounts, it's kept under control with the immune system, that probably we would convert this to a chronic illness that might not need antiretrovirals for a very long time. So there definitely is place for modification of disease. But, I think everybody would agree the first goal here is really to prevent infection, because it's an incurable disease at the moment.
Then how significant would a successful mRNA HIV vaccine be, given how effective the current HIV medication or therapies are right now at helping people live with the virus?
Yeah, and I hear that quite a lot. Why are we even looking for a cure? Why are you looking for a vaccine? We've got fantastic technology coming now where you can have an injection every 2 months, and not worry, or take a pill a day. Who many of us take a pill a day. Why are you worried? But what I hear from people who live with HIV, and I've, obviously interacted with those individuals for 35 years, and many of them are not only my patients, they're good friends of mine. It's tiring to know in the back of your mind all the time that, if you don't take these pills, you're going to run into major trouble. People describe it as a sentence. They describe it as reminding me every day that I live with a terminal illness if I'm not taking my medication. And then the population, I'm absolutely passionate about, young people and adolescents, they often struggle to take a pill every day, and many of us do. I'm a shocking pill taker. And young people have other things in their lives, and the last thing you want to be reminded every day is that they have to take a pill because they have HIV. So, definitely having less frequent medication is helpful, but I think a lot of people want sometimes more biological answers to their problems. They're not happy taking a pharmaceutical into their bodies every day, or they're willing to do it for a time, but then they want to have a rest. And I think getting these options will just first of all, give us choice, which I think always improves adherence and the ability for people to stick to a program. But also, I think for many people, it'll be liberating to have more of a sort of natural response to their disease. So I think it's something we need to keep moving for, whilst celebrating that treatment has come on brilliantly. We also now have pre-exposure prophylaxis, of course, which means we can prevent HIV with these antiretroviral-based therapies. But again, options are always good. Choice is wonderful, and that's where we want to go.
How soon are we likely to see the development of an mRNA-based HIV vaccine in terms of trials and people going forward in that direction?
So I would love to say, the 10 months it took for us to find a COVID vaccine. I would love that. I mean, HIV has infected 78 million people around this world. We currently have 38 million people living with HIV. 40 odd million have died. Some of them, think of the people we've lost to this, and let alone, the names we don't even know, many, many people in this country. Gosh, we've really borne the brunt of it. A vaccine, is just so needed. It would make such a difference. And, I've been I have to tell you, my eyes have been on stalks this last year at the speed with which the COVID vaccine has been brought about. And I think with that kind of enthusiasm, energy, sense of urgency, if we can harness that around HIV, and I want to always put its poor cousin, tuberculosis, in the mix as well, we could do this. So it really is about saying those technologies exist. Let's bring our best minds and resources to bear, and let's try and, knock this one out of the ballpark. I mean, it would be just such a triumph, I think, for science and for humanity.
If we do get there, would you say then that the successful development of mRNA vaccines with regards to COVID would have been seen as the breakthrough moment, as the point where that kind of led us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a two-way conversation here. There's no doubt that COVID technology, R&D, has been built on the back of HIV. So HIV laid many very important foundations, and I think very much expedited the success we've seen in the last 10, 11 months, let alone just the clinical trial sites we've had in this country, that we've just pivoted from HIV to COVID and been able to deliver clinical trial results in a very short space of time. But I do think the vice versa works in the other direction. I think if only, as I say, that the scales have fallen from our eyes in terms of what we can do when we put our minds to it. When we put our resources behind it, when we have political will and scientific, enthusiasm behind it, it's amazing what can be done. And then, yes, I think the fact that this very exciting platform has shown feasibility should lend some enthusiasm in that direction. I think we at least need to explore that opportunity and see where it lands.
It sounds like a bit of a revolution that you're talking about when we think of how we could possibly treat viruses and diseases in the future. Are we entering the mRNA age?
So I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a laboratory scientist, manufacturer. I'm a clinician, so I see the other end of it. And, I think what this pandemic has taught us is that these pathogens are formidable. They are unpredictable. They can ravage the world in a very short space of time. So we now have, compared today to 1918, when the Spanish flu epidemic hit, we now have amazing technology. But I think what we have really learned in the last year is that we can do it faster, more efficiently, more, in a way that the urgency is matched. And we can deliver much more quickly than we have done to date. So I think there is a revolution in that regard. In some ways, maybe we even feel a little bit triumphant, and maybe we need to dial that back a bit, because one thing about this pathogen, I think it teaches us great humility. I think the onset of the new variants absolutely was a humbling experience for all of us. And we have to keep that ahead of us all the time, that these pathogens, they're in some ways, they're in control. And if we want to fight that control back, we have to be rapid, urgent, and smart, and move quickly. And that I hope is another lesson that we can bring to whatever's waiting out for us there in the world today.
Thank you so much, Prof. I mean, everything you're saying, it's like giving me goosebumps, because when there's will and when there's determination, a sense of urgency, it's incredible what we can achieve. I sometimes then wonder to myself, as you are speaking, whether people, I don't know what the word is, whether they switch off when they hear about HIV, whether they still engage, whether they're still hungry, whether they still have an appetite to find out more, to learn more, to put their energy behind finding that vaccine. Because right now, listen, there's not anyone who hasn't heard about HIV. And so that for me is almost like, how do we kind of reinvigorate our enthusiasm around HIV and even other diseases? You've mentioned TB. So that is something I sometimes wonder. Have we become, I don't want to say like a daisical, or does it come in one ear and go out the other? We've heard it all before. Enough, Prof, with HIV now. We've heard your story. We heard it the first time.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. And I think what you're hinting at is the sort of complacency that has come with just almost too many years of living with the virus, and also some of the success we've had. So now, I think what's been different about SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 is every day we've had the communiques of how many people have died, and it's been so in our faces. And in some ways, and I know many of the folk that I interact with in the HIV field, we've almost said, gee, we've died silently of HIV. No one knew, it wasn't on the news. I loved what Health Minister Mkhize has done in the COVID space, but we haven't been getting that in the HIV space for a very long time. People get infected every day, and it's a silent, forgotten kind of thing. So I do think we do need to remind ourselves that this country still is incredibly burdened with HIV. Every person who becomes infected with HIV, to my mind, is a failure, because we do not on their part, but on the part of public health and medical intervention, because we do have ways to prevent. And for me, it means that I did not reach that individual with the right information they needed. And every person who dies living with HIV, again, is a tragic loss in the public health system. So, and still many people die of HIV in this country every year, and so somehow the kind of reminders one doesn't want to live, and it's a careful balance, because we also want to get the message across that you don't have a terminal illness, you're definitely going to die. I mean, we've got to balance this, but somehow we've got to reinvigorate the field that it is not okay when 1,000 young women in this country, on a 2-weekly basis become infected with HIV, many of them because of non-consensual sex, or, the lack of opportunity to use a preventive method. Those kinds of statistics, we have to see them and engage with them again, and then redouble our efforts to say that is not okay in 2021 in South Africa. What can we be doing to turn those statistics around? And I'm a firm believer it's policy, it's behavior, but it's also technology, right? I'm quite happy to harness biomedical interventions to help us in this quest. And that's where, I think reinvigorating the field around the biotechnology is very important, including vaccines.
As you're talking, you are so right. I'm thinking I would have a different relationship with HIV awareness. I would have a different relationship with the knowledge that I have around HIV if I was reminded daily how many more people were infected on my TV screen, on my social media platform, if it was the topic of conversation. But that conversation died out a long time ago. So I agree 100% that we need to be reinvigorated about HIV and finding that vaccine. Thank you so much for talking to us. I am
pleasure.
So grateful for your time. I really do appreciate it. Congratulations once again on day one. This is super exciting. Got you.
Yes.
And that if there was anyone who was going to take you away from us, it had to be the president. So we okay with it. It couldn't be anyone else.
Thank you. It was great. So thank you, and thank you for your interest in this topic. We really appreciate it.